traditional media channels, right? So we're going to talk about media planning and buying. So when we think of traditional media channels, we could think of some basic ones that we all know of. We have things like television, or things like radio. We have things like print, magazines and such, and things like out of home, which means anything other than billboards outside, posters outside, transit media, when you're on the bus or the trains, the advertisements. Those will all be classified as out of home media channels. We say more modern would be kind of the use of digital. Right? The difference between the two is that digital is probably a little bit more accurate, right? But things are still unfolding and developing. Whereas traditional is more projections, right? Gives you a lot of information based on a lot of general information. We'll kind of just dissect what kind of information that is. In terms of, we say, media planning and buying, we're talking about a media strategy, right? Still part of this integrated marketing communications. We say, where's the integrated part? The integrated part is using multiple media channels to get the most effective results, right? So we said, using multiple media channels to get your communications out, your message. Right? This is what it's all about, your message. We say our main objective usually with this is try to get the biggest audience, target audience. Not every audience matters to us that much, right? Everybody demands what we offer for the least amount of money. Right? So you say you have a budget. Budgets differ depending on the scope and size of the corporation, this marketing department, the product or service that you're offering. So inevitably, you're trying to reach as many people in your target audience for the least amount of money. That would be an extremely successful campaign. We'll talk about things like shares and ratings, which really have to do with viewership and advertising. So we can talk about maybe some of the largest shows that have the greatest shares, meaning kind of the most viewed shows at a specific time. What do you think is the most viewed show in the United States? The most viewed program, I would say. One single program. Should be pretty easy. Any Bad Bunny fans? There you go, right? The Super Bowl, right? So like, you know, what kind of stuff would you need the greatest exposure for on a particular television program? Like, not for niche products. Why do you need to reach 60% of people watching television with a niche product? But it's probably, that would be irrelevant. So we say probably general household items, which we kind of always see. Or general item specific, meaning insurance, which most people get on home or car or even sometimes apartment, maybe insurance, snacks and soda drinks. You will see that. So it's a generic product usually uses television, right, to get out to generic audience, general audience. So we'll discuss these facets. We'll learn about what is a media strategy, what elements and individuals are involved in media planning, terms used to describe advertising, helping the marketing team design effective campaigns, what types of advertising objectives do individual companies pursue, also some advantages and disadvantages with each traditional advertising medium, how the marketing team uses the media mix to increase the effectiveness of advertising. Key issues with media selection in B2B markets and issues that are associated with media selection in international markets. complications. Right? Like, well, okay, who's buying for mom? Is it the sons or the daughters? And if it's sons, do we target them differently than we target the daughters? Do we just make a generic message out there specifically focusing on mom and not which one of the children? Oh, wow. I believe Mother's Day is one of generates like some of the most revenue for any holiday, right? I think Father's Day is like one of the least. Go show you about those. Mom. There it goes. Good dad. Right, so the different kind of strategies. You're like, hey, we got male-oriented media, female-oriented media. We could say we could stratify this different approaches. And we use both and target them using different media channels. Doing different programs. Now let me kind of give you a little history lesson on things like, let's think, radio and television. Because we'll talk about that because those are traditional media channels. Used to be way back in the day in television, where there were no advertisers to break up the show, to interrupt your television program. Used to be consistent. We watched the whole, say, 30 minutes of a show. Came around in the 1950s when advertising kind of became a real kind of science. When once again we say advertising is psychological. So you can always correlate the field of psychology, what it was doing at the time, with the field of marketing and components of advertising that that was doing. So in the 1950s and beyond, television programs started to introduce sponsorship, meaning that they would get advertisers. So think of a tobacco company or a soda drink company or a car company, car manufacturer, would sponsor their show, meaning essentially they're really paying for all of the things to produce that show. Producers, actors, lighting, everything, and the broadcasting with it. At the beginning, what they would have is kind of sponsored control shows. That means that the sponsor say, hey, since I'm giving you this money, I get to actually control the content of your show. So we get to review the show, and stuff we don't like, we scratch that out. Like, that kind of stuff for our audience in terms of being the most creative for viewership. Kind of like a corporate control of viewership. And that would happen a lot in, say, like talk shows. Anyone watch the Tonight Show? You know, like Jimmy Kimmel or Jimmy Fallon. But way before those guys, David Letterman, Johnny Carson was big. And what you would watch during, say, like a talk show is, say, like Johnny Carson would be holding a cigarette. I would be smoking on the early shows on the set. Oh, what is he smoking? Oh, smoking a particular brand. We're responsible to that, right? You may pull up a newspaper or a magazine or something of the sort, right? A product maybe sitting on the table or something, right? And that was all to promote the sponsors. Later on, they found that to be frustrating. Say like the networks, right? The actual networks who would own these shows, they found that to be frustrating because they didn't want to completely control shows. So what they would kind of do is go to a magazine strategy. So think of a magazine. You say in a magazine, you have little blocks on each page. I could divide these blocks, and I could sell you some space each block. And we'll put it on page 5, upper left corner. Right? Oh, you want a full page? More money. Give me more money. Oh, we ran out of space. Add some more space pages to the magazine. It was 32 pages last edition, and 40. We got more advertising, right? More sponsors. They kind of went to that, where essentially they were selling space, right? Parking car. They're selling blocks of space. That way they still control the content, but they still are able to sell to get sponsorship, obviously money to keep the show going. Right? It's all stuff to produce the shows, big actors, et cetera, et cetera. Right? To know if if it's a successful show. And we would kind of be like, all right, that makes sense, right? We use these shows to really know if they're successful, probably based off sponsorship, and viewership, we would say, right? And the type of viewers who are watching. So we kind of went through that program. Same kind of goes for radio, right? And they really go hand in hand. You think of, well, how are you tracking this stuff? Well, your TV has an antenna, right? So when you're on nationally syndicated broadcasting, things you watch Channel 5 ABC, Channel 5 NBC, Channel 7 ABC, Channel 32, right? Et cetera, et cetera. And they go hand in hand, right? You say UHF and VHF. If anyone never heard of these terms, you've seen the frequencies. Like you turn on the radio, turn to 107.5 WGCI, B96, 96. You're like, well, okay, that's interesting. Even with radio, AM and FM, like one measures frequency, that's why they call it FM modulator. You're like, okay, that seems more consistent stream. That means it won't be static. I don't need that for things like music. Like, I don't want my music. That's still the same. Consistent. Maybe like, well, AM, there's still an AM station question. AM, well, what's the difference? AM is amplitude modulator. So AM is higher the wave, coverage. So now radio waves, like your phone is catching radio waves right now, so you have a set to work. Right, the AM is static. You turn an AM station, you're like, it's so static. Well, it's not consistent strength, it's not frequency, it's amplitude, right? And you're like, okay, well, why would anyone be on AM? Well, they would if they just want to hear news information, stories, politics, right? They don't really mind that extra static. Yeah, okay. It's different things, kind of different channels, different platforms for different things. Right, so that's kind of the thing where we move into a magazine or a slot kind of sponsorship when it comes to those things. So we think of newspapers, magazines have slots, television has slots when programming, radio has slots in between the songs, right? Or in between the talk shows or sport shows, right? Your interruption, so that the sponsors could get their messaging out. All right, so in terms of traditional media, that's what kind of focus on. Ain't like, well, the internet, right? We say, hey, beyond the 90s and beyond, the 1990s and beyond. You're like, well, okay, the internet's here, and that's a little bit more accurate because we get real time information. In terms of, anyone ever heard of Nielsen, the rating company? Right, so you're like, okay, well, what are they going to do with this data, this information, right? So we think of things like, which we'll talk about, is advertising shares, right? And you say advertising shares is really the number of televisions that are turned on at a specific time, right? And those who are watching a particular program, and we say we can catch the frequency, we can know what they're watching. We don't know who's watching it, but the projection, hey, how many people we average in a household, right? When we look at demographic information, maybe things from the census, we can look by neighborhood, we can look by city, we can look by state, we can look by the nation. We can average out information, right? 2 parents, 2 kids, single parents, single individual, no kids. We can average all this information out and see how many televisions also are in the house. Based on television sales. Television sales are calculated in some to these projections. So we think of things like shares, which we'll discuss. We're thinking about maybe the number of televisions that are on that tune into a particular program, which we said the Super Bowl has the largest. I think the Academy Awards, the Oscars, probably second, right? Most viewed programs. Now we have something different called a rating, which is probably a little bit more relevant to advertisers. Say a rating is watching of my specific target demographic. Let's say females 18, years of 18 to 35. How many of those are watching this program at this specific time? But that's more pertinent information if we're selling to that particular demographic. The other information, like, well, it's generic information. That's a ton of people. I don't know which ton of people who are relevant to whatever it is we're selling. Right? So, when we think of media planning in mind, we're talking about the where, when, and how, right? Where are we going to place the ads? Are we going to use multiple media channels? And if we are, how do we break that up based on information out there, our target demographics? And also time, right? Like time matters. Well, if we're using radio, well, let's say to television. If we're using television and we want to advertise jobs, right? Let's say we are a recruitment company, and we want to advertise jobs. At what time of the day do you think is best to advertise jobs to that specific demographic? Unemployed. What time of the day? Hmm? 5 p.m. Why 5 p.m.?
That's when most people get out of their 9 to 5s.
All right, that's most people get out. They're done with work. What about before? Right, think this time. This time of the day. Wow. Who would be home? Why are you home? You should either be in school or at work. Unless you're retired, you're like, yeah, the exceptions. Retired, wealthy, don't need jobs, work from home, business owners from home, the exceptions, right? So if you were to be home right now watching broadcast television, you might see some, hey, we're a job fair, or college, or university advertising. Like, dude, why are you home? You should be at school or work, right? It's 11:30 in the morning. Because most people work 9 to 5, right? But most people work 9 to 5, they're not home to watch television. So we say, hey, you know what? It matters the timing. When do we put the ad out? Right? We can't just say, oh, I'm going to use television. I'm like, okay, what stations? All right, what slots? What time? Like, hey, we only get we have a 30-second show, we have 30-second advertising. It really has to count for the people that matters to us to see it. Right? Can't just be generically spread out there for everybody to see. That's still a waste of money. Right? Which we say we're concerned about. We don't want to waste the money, the budget. All right, so it takes a lot of careful coordination. All right, so media strategy encompasses analyzing and choosing the media, right? Using that information that's already out there. We said we use Nielsen's ratings to look at demographic information, see who's usually homes at around what time. And you're like, okay, well, maybe it's radio. You're like, well, what time is the best time to use traditional radio as a channel for advertising? Well, we already established that people are getting to work to be there from 9 to 5, usually, right, the general population. That's probably smart that we did it either while they're driving home or driving to work. So, like, at other times, may not work. Say, before rush hour, or during rush hour, and probably during the evening rush hour as well too, same for things like radio. Now once again, we say, hey, you know, there's some people who have different sleeping patterns. Older individuals, much older individuals, kind of sleep like babies, kind of like infant. You return to being an infant as a much older individual. Your sleeping patterns become like a baby. You several naps a day. You wake up at 2 in the morning, 3, go back at 4. Right? We're sleeping patterns. So you say, it may work to advertise to those individuals, it could be life insurance, it could be things about medical care, right, health care. There could be things, about medication, all sorts of things, right? Maybe you can travel, retirement homes, that might be advertised to say midnight or beyond, when everybody usually sleeps. But this demographic is still up with a TV on it. Alright, we'll get our first presentations out of the way. Alright, perfect gift this Christmas. Hang on. Alright.
The perfect gift this Christmas is never too soon. It's time. So you're trying to do like the Mariah Carey song, yeah. And our focus is like point of view. So like obviously you see it's in front of the Christmas tree and it's like grabbing your eye and like the color is very festive.
And it's like a call to action, it's never too soon. And it's about the engagement ring, so it's never too soon to propose to your girlfriend.
Now, how would you describe this advertising? Like, is it, like a visual pathway? Or is it something to do with color, psychology, or?
I think for like the color-wise, we wanted to stick to like festivals, because we had originally, it was kind of blue, but then it kind of like low-key didn't look good, I think just in terms of like appealing wise. And so with like the warmer colors, I also think it makes you think of like love, and it just like is bright and it draws your eyes. And then kind of with the words, we kind of still have to work on that a little, as you can tell with like the different fonts, but like, it's never too soon. Come tell me it's time, like a flow a little bit, so like ring and then bam, bam, bam.
Okay, yeah, you started with cursive writing at the top, a little bit of lowercase in the middle, and almost completely uppercase at the bottom. Okay, all right, excellent. Nice. Kind of like sitting here, this is cool. How's the professor? What do you think? All right. Would have been cool if you could have added Mariah's,
We literally had it, and then we were just like, we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
Looks like Alex and Lloyd.
Yes, this is Zarab. I guess, so this is from the gold outing that Concordia recently had for the athletics program. And, like basically every athletics team is supposed to like bring in X amount of people going out to, this gold outing. So this is more so like a promotional, act, just sort of showing that this is like a cool event to go out to. It's all smiles too, so it's like, yeah, it's just, you enjoy your time going out to this gold outing. So pay $150 so you can raise money for our programs. So-
Now, what about this particular illustration is unique? Is it the curvature of the body of the swinger? Is it the font? Is it the background? Like when we talk about composition, like the background, is that the main kind of focal point? Like what's really drawing the audience to be stimulated by this ad?
So, one, rule of thirds.
Mhm.
So relatively is on the right side, and then sort of balance it out with the text on the left. So I just feel like the focus is on keeping everything a bit more balanced. So your attention is drawn towards like, he's looking down the swing, so like, that's the upper third, and the
Mhm.
bottom third you can see. Generally, he's looking down. Also, I'll see the balance out.
Okay. And the fact that like he's mid-swing, right? So he's curved and that font fits into the negative space of the curvature, right? Kind of fits in. So that kind of draws in a unique kind of visual.
And the text was just fit perfectly to sort of play into that curvature on the side too. And I thought it was cool just adding like Concordia versus Chicago logo at the bottom to sort of like establish that it's like a CUC event.
Yeah, and it's, you know, what it even would have been slightly even cooler is that took this and put it where the ball is and maybe rounded it like a ball, right? So it would have been the golf ball, like the actual group. Okay, excellent. Great, great, great. All right, we'll come back to the other presentation in a minute. Question? All right, first thing we need in our media planning is an analysis of the target market, right? Not only do we need information on demographics, age demographics, potentially income information, right? Sex and gender information, head of household information, things like this. But we also need analysis on on how these individuals use the media, right? We're talking about in terms of reading magazines. Our target market, do they read off their tablets or their phone? Or do they actually go physically purchase the print? Right? Now, print's kind of going out of phase, obviously, because everybody uses technology. But there's other ways in terms of people consume sorts of different types of media, right? So you think of radio and you say, hey, we have traditional, but maybe people are listening to XM in some way. Maybe people are using like iHeartRadio app, maybe people are using stations off of Pandora and Spotify, things of that nature, right? So if we're talking about people promoting music or things of that nature, we have to consider the digital platforms. So we gotta focus on those consumer behavior. And then purchasing process, how do people go about purchasing? Is it a delayed purchase? Meaning that, hey, we expect people to see it at one point in time, you should think about it, but maybe it involves a little bit more information before purchasing. Or are we promoting something that's a compulsive or impulsive buy? And media planning involves media choices, as we talked about with radio and television and out of home and things of those natures, right? The different habits that people have in terms of viewing, and the marketing analytics, which means the return on investment. We put out a campaign with X amount of dollars, we focus it and place it, we bought Facebook ads, we bought ads on radio, right? We bought slots, advertising slots on television. We may have placed something in some magazines or in the city newspaper, something of the sort. And did that yield us a return in terms of anything? Did it increase sales, which also increased our revenue, which may have made us a profit, decrease for some particular reason? What are the analytics? Did we lose or did we gain, right? We say advertising is nothing more than an investment. You're investing something with the hopes that you'll get a return, which is usually some sort of profit or increase in sales and revenue. Here's some examples of times individuals are exposed to advertisements. Hey, can you think of when you were exposed to advertisement today, outside of, say, seeing out of home? Outside of saying you drove to work, drove to school and saw an ad. Any other ways that you were exposed to advertisements today before you got to class? Yes?
At the cafeteria, what plays, I feel like, oh, there's this like announcement going around for the school, like usually it's a plays, sometimes it's events. And, yeah, just like goes out.
Yeah, think about that. Perfect opportunity. I think about the school is doing the same thing, right? The school is really focused on how do we get awareness and exposure to students based on their behavior. What are they doing? Are they stopping and hanging out and talking at the cafeteria, right? Will it matter if we get it in the hallways when people are just walking on from point A to point B? That may be ineffective, but it might be kind of a nuisance altogether. So yeah, we're hearing that, hey, at the cafeteria is a good time to promote something about the school, something's going on, an event, athletics, something of the sort. Anyone else? Or what if you were advertised to today? Yes?
Driving in the car, like the radio advertisements.
Anything memorable?
Yeah, there's like some concerts coming up.
All right, you're like, that's perfect. I'm listening to music. So guess what? People like music. They're tuned into the station. For promoters of concerts, right? Who are trying to get this information about concert. Perfect platform, perfect time, right? Headed into school or work. This is a perfect slot to be in to promote concerts coming up. And it might be relative do you feel that the concerts were relative to the actual type of music you're listening to? Like, say, the genre of music you're listening
Yeah,
to?
like depending on the station that you're listening to.
Okay, so like, hey, there's more sort of analysis. Hey, we don't just, I'm not gonna put opera concert coming up, just gonna listen to hip hop or R&B, right? But that doesn't make sense, right? Put concerts coming up for pop, rock, hip hop, R&B, while people are listening to our stations with those genres, right? Or emo, who are my emo people in the class? Yeah, I was totally emo in high school. For a long time, I said like 2 months. All right. Hey, here's some things. A favorite wake up radio station or one that I listen to during the commute to work, as Joseph said. Favorite morning news show or newspaper. Anyone here actually reads newspapers? Anyone? Raise your hand if you read the newspaper on a daily basis. Raise your hands if you read a newspaper on your tablet, phone, or laptop on a daily basis. Right? So think about it. We say once again, target audience is not you. It's not your age demographic. It's probably my age, right? People who are concerned about taxes, inflation, the housing market, insurance rates, right? All these sorts of things, right? Are still reading newspapers as I do. Other things, trader business journals examine while at work, radio station play during office hours at work, and favorite computer sites access during work. Other ones, favorite magazines read during the evening hours, television shows watched during the evening hours, internet sites during leisurely hours, shopping, dining, and entertainment venues that are free. All right, and so we have the components of a media plan. Now, what should be kind of your concern with your strategies you're coming up with these companies that you're going to examine? So we say we start with a marketing analysis, review of the market program where advertising fits into the plan. Then we have, so that's the thing, we're like, hey, you know, advertising, it's most people think advertising is marketing. But no, marketing is the umbrella, advertising is one component of marketing. So first we have to start with marketing analysis, talking about the actual marketing program, everything that encompasses marketing. Then we could say where the advertising fits into this marketing strategy, right? So we say we have a strategy with advertising, with a budget to be used, as well as some objectives. So think about what those companies you're working for. You're like, hey, we're working on the advertising analysis. Who are the people that shops at this particular store? What are their age range? Where do they work? What do they do? What is their lifestyle? How much money do they have to spend? Right? And where could we find them so we could promote to them based on their behaviors? Right, next we have the media strategy. Which media are you going to use? Right? Are you going to use, like I use quite a bit. Use radio, a little bit of television, maybe 20% of the budget will go towards social media marketing. Maybe we'll do things like internet search marketing, Google, et cetera, et cetera. And then the media schedule. When will the ads appear in these videos? Right? When will they appear? And then conclude with a justification and summary of the media plan. So you gotta imagine yourself as a marketing manager, you're in control of everything, you're working with the creative department, the budgeting department, right? The advertising department, right? All these departments, and you say, I'll get all this information together, and now I'm going to present this to, say, a client. The client would be Toyota, the client could be Procter & Gamble for toothpaste or detergent. I'm presenting this to my client and I say, this is my justification for this, and this is a summary of what I think is the best use of your money to reach your target audience, right? To justify the means. All right, media planners. Their responsibility is to match target markets with advertising media that have similar audiences, right? Locate the best local medium. For this one, we say St. Francis Medical Center advertising. Let me see if we can go over this one up. All right, so we say, all right, because we matter to so many. So this is St. Francis Medical Center. This is St. Francis, all of them, really. And because early detection saves lives, St. Francis Medical Center is the first medical provider in the USA offering all three of the latest technologies together for comprehensive breast cancer detection. Right, so we're talking about breast cancer detection, mammography, biopsy guidance, breast stabilization system. All right, so we say, hey, here's an ad. Here is reaching target markets, right? Anything that stands out to say, hey, this is relevant towards people who may have breast cancer or something relative to breast cancer. Anything. Right, we say, hey, it looks like in terms of the actresses, we chose a middle-aged female adult who will want to do early detection, right? Breast cancer screening using a mammogram. And we chose a much older female adult. That would be target market for people who should be, have heightened awareness